The International Newsnet World Report is a national television news show available in more than 30 million homes. We broadcast daily real news the networks won't tell you. We are solely viewer-supported. That means you. You can donate at our website, inenworldreport.net. We hope you find the following interview informative and helpful.
We're joined with Cinda Firestone Fox, who's the director of Attica. The film is being premiered once again at the Tribeca Film Festival, and we're very happy to have Cinda with us today. Cinda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Cinda, many people don't know what this movie is about, so why don't you just give us a little outline of what this incident was and what made you do the film?
Well, over 30 years ago, there was a takeover by the inmates of Attica prison over the prison conditions. And what happened was they had a list of demands, and they called in a lot of observers, politicians and newspapermen, etc. And they set up, it was almost like a city within the yard. And what was amazing about it was all sort of racial and class barriers broke down. And it was really a functioning, non-racial city. And they had these hostages. And they said, you know, if we don't get our demands, we'll kill the hostages. And the state just came barreling in and, you know, shot everybody. And then they said, oh, well, you know, the hostages were killed by the inmates. They slashed their throats just like they said they were going to do. But then, and the press just bought it. They just said, oh, that's what happened. And a while later, this young coroner said, hey, wait a minute, there's no slashed throats here, it's just bullet holes. And it came out that, in fact, the inmates hadn't killed any of the hostages. In fact, they'd taken very good care of them. And it was just the guards and the state troopers and the area police that had come in with, in some cases, 12-gauge shotguns and just blasted people. And they killed among not only inmates, but they killed 9 of the hostages. So that's what the movie's about, like why this happened, how it happened, how the press reacted, and you know, what it means to our society.
Now, of course, a movie like this, you know, we've had like 25, 30 years of essentially a buildup of what's called the prison industrial complex, and this movie is sort of a prescient look at what it was like back then in '71. How do you think people's attitudes towards this issue have changed and evolved since you made your movie?
Well, there's been one good thing, and that is that people don't take prisons by force anymore. I was watching a documentary on the retaking of a prison in, I think it was New Orleans, the Marielitos. But that's about the only thing that's changed. I think the racial conditions are worse. There's more racism. There's more prisoners. I mean, there are many, many, many more prisoners. And another depressing thing is you look at the movie in the hearings that took place afterwards, people are talking about recidivism as if, you know, they really believe in rehabilitation. I don't think people talk about rehabilitation very much anymore. It's more just sort of shove them in there and forget about them. So I think in a lot of ways, it's gotten worse. And what really scares me is it seems to me that civil liberties in general are eroding, like in Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib. And I think that has a scary effect in general. So in a lot of ways, I don't think things have gotten better. I think in some ways they've gotten worse.
Now, you talk about how the media distorted that incident. You yourself were involved in the alternative media at that time. In Liberation News Service. Tell us a little bit about what that was and how you contrast it to the situation we're in now. Because we have a similar situation, of course, being repeated in how the war in Iraq is presented to the public. You know, they've sort of been castigated for their obeisance to power the same way they were in 1964, 65. How do you compare the two situations, and in particular your experiences in the alternative media?
Well, I joined Liberation News Service because I was very upset about how the media was covering the war in Vietnam, and a lot of other subjects too, but basically the war in Vietnam. So I joined Liberation News Service, which is a very small group of people. We had a commune, and we were in a basement, and we had these 2 big old presses that we churned out material on, and we took our own pictures, and we did most of our own research. And then we had to put all this stuff in big bags and take it down to the post office. So it was frustrating because we had a lot of subscribers. In those days, there were a lot of community newspapers and a lot of alternative newspapers, which I don't see so much anymore. But we were very circumscribed in what we could do because the physicality of putting that news service out took so much of our time that we couldn't do as much, at least I couldn't do as much, real investigative reporting as I would have liked. And now it's so great because of the internet, and there's so much more possibility because you can just get it out so much more easily. The only problem I find with the internet is anybody can put anything out there, so you're not always sure whether they've checked their facts or not. But at least there's more information out there. When I joined Liberation News Service, there were the small alternative newspapers, but there were just basically 4 networks. There were the 3 networks, and there was PBS, and that was it. And now there's much more information out there, but it still seems to me that people are swallowing a lot of baloney. You know, I mean, I guess we should all be more aware since there is more information that we can get, but I don't think mainstream journalists have gotten that much better. I was just actually talking to 2 people who quit the ABC News, and they were very upset about, for example, the kind of stories they had to cover. And, you know, these sort of trivial stories when really important stuff they felt was happening.
Now tell us a little bit about some of the difficulties you had in making this movie.
Well, the main difficulty I had was that I couldn't get any of the guards or the administration to talk to me. There were some of the guards really did want to talk to me, especially some of the guys that had been hostages. But there was real pressure on them not to talk to me. And so one guy actually wanted to talk to me, but by the time I got up to Buffalo, he'd been silenced. I don't know exactly whether he was threatened or whatever. You know, it's a very small community. And, you know, the guys in the movie talk about the pressure on the guards, that if guards get too friendly with the inmates or whatever, the other guards kind of keep them in line. So that was very frustrating to me. So I thought, well, I've got to get this McKay Commission footage. And it took me a couple of years to get PBS to give me the footage. So, you know, by proxy, I could get those interviews. And